a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and viewing information on our district YouTube channel can be found on the district website. Zach, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then can you call roll?
Following board members are present at the District Administration Office: Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz here, Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
And following board members are not present, including Natalie Copeland and Monica Segarra-Swartz. Following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office: Superintendent Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of PK5 Education Nikki Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services Dr. Mike Rivard, Executive Director of Community Education Adam Holm, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Operations Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Research, Enrollment, and Assessments Don Roper, Director of Community Engagement and Communications Tammy DeLand, Media Technicians Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, and Custodian on site is Evan Voss.
Thank you. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting and work session agenda.
So move.
And do I have a second? Okay. I have a motion by Scott, a second by Al. Zach, can you call a vote?
And Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes.
Thank you. Then we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of personnel staff changes. Item B, approval of monthly financial report for November 2023. Item C, approval of monthly treasurer's report for November 2023. Item D, board policy 601, school district curriculum and instructional goals as revised, third reading. And item E, board policy 603, curriculum development as revised, third reading. At this time, does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, so then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Heather. Zach, can you call vote?
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Shannon Haas. Zach Dorholtz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Then we're moving on to our one information item tonight. We have a middle level courses update presented by Shannon Avison, Director of Secondary Education, and Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Secondary Education. Welcome.
Yeah, let me make sure. Excuse me. Good evening. Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, board members. I was just getting my technology kind of up and ready. So we're going to get a chance to really look at middle level course update, what's taking place as we prepare for the 24-25 school year. We'll review the middle level course catalog and the update. We didn't have any updates per course. But we'll get a chance to share what's offered currently right now at middle level. We'll look at the registration process. It all aligns with our career and post-secondary education options. One of the things we want to think about, and we started this conversation right before break, on how we really start to look at how we get our students ready for after, high school and post-secondary options, and how does it start in middle school? And so within that middle level years of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we have a good understanding that students need to start to explore, get to know who themselves are, really get to meet friends, and all the things that starts to give them opportunities and experiences to start to find out what I like, what are my interests in school, and what do those experiences look like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we want to start it now. We'll kind of look at what's offered, how we prepare our students getting ready in those fundamental years. I was just in the building right before break and having conversations with students specifically around why it's important to have fundamental skills or start to learn them in middle school, because they still at that age do not really see especially with, grades. And here's what we need to help them understand around learning by each content area. If I like art, let me try art. If I like math, let me try math, and however it looks, right? In the sense, if I like music and all the things that those are those times, they don't see it at that age. All they care about is, I'm learning who my friends are, all the things, and we get them to explore activities, but we want them to reflect and do these things around awareness now. And so we'll get a chance to really look, and Shannon, Director Avenson, we'll get a chance to really look at the classes, the offerings 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that'll really help us look at how we start to support our kids in middle school with just those fundamental fun things in learning. And so I'll turn it over to Director Avenson to talk about, each grade level and then all the courses that are offered at this time currently.
So I'll speak mostly. Sorry. There you go. Now was it on? There we go. All right, so I'll speak mostly to North and South junior highs, and it's a 6-period day, and they do have advisory. At North, it's more in the middle of their day. At South, it is at the beginning of their day, but each school has an advisory at some point in their day. It's about 30 minutes long. And then they all have, in addition to their advisory, 6 periods. In 6th grade, and we will go through 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, each one of them has obviously a math that they offer. So Math 6, in addition to Math 6, students can take a more advanced, and our students do have the opportunity in middle school to be even, 1 to 2 years advanced, and I'll get into that in a little bit more. They also have the opportunity in middle school to be advanced in language arts. So you'll see there, they have their regular language arts class, or they could take an advanced language arts. You'll see it referred to in future slides as ALA. And that is a 6th through 8th grade advanced coursework that is actually high school level coursework. They will, in 6th grade, they are doing earth science as their science course, and earth science, they study things like geology, astronomy, meteorology, the weather, that fun stuff. That's what I used to teach at the high school level. And science standards, they've been moving those around, so you'll hear me speak to that a little bit. But at this time, with the new standards, they are teaching earth science standards at the 6th grade level. And social studies have been doing some shifting as well. Minnesota studies is what is being taught and for social studies in 6th grade now. Phi Ed and Fine Arts. Phi Ed is an every other day offering, and opposite Phi Ed, we offer a Fine Arts offering. For our 6th graders, they can take either band, choir, or orchestra, or they can take C4. C4, as you see there, is Career, College, Community, and Citizenship. And it's just like what it sounds. It is an opportunity to learn about careers and college, to get some knowledge around the different type of career options that are out there, college options, differences between community colleges, junior colleges, four-year colleges, and then like it says there too, just different ways to be a part of your community, what citizenship looks like, and so that C4 class would be opposite, just like a music class throughout the entire school year. In addition to that, you'll see that last period is an opportunity. Every trimester they would switch and they would take either robotics, art, or life smarts. Robotics at the sixth grade level is exactly what you would envision it to be. It is an introductory to robotics where they're learning how to program a robot. Art at that point is really, it's drawing, it's charcoal, it's 2D, 3D art. And then Life Smarts is really about life choices, healthy decision-making, some study skills, some types of those things. And I do have a course catalog here, and if we have some additional questions, I can dig into that course catalog a little bit later if there's some more questions about that. But we'll jump into seventh grade. Again, that advisory, seventh grade, again, pre-algebra, and that's what a majority of seventh graders are taking unless they're on that more advanced track. Language arts, again, or that ALA, if they qualify for that more advanced high school level course. Life science is the course that they're taking. And again, life science would be like that, what you remember in high school, you were taking biology, you're looking at hereditary and or genetics and those pieces, ecology, US history, and then one thing that is new to seventh grade this year, instead of honors sections where we would have like one section of honors, we are offering what's called honors distinction. And that is where every student in every single language arts class, every single life science class, every single US history class at North and South in seventh grade has an opportunity to do that more rigorous coursework. Every student has the opportunity to do that. And so they're doing some of these, they can opt into that more rigorous coursework. And so that is new to seventh grade this year. And it was something that was decided to give every student the opportunity to do that rather than have it just be built upon scheduling, and that one period a day or that one class being offered as an honors does really become a challenge, as you can imagine, for that scheduling piece. And then also it is challenging to determine who fits in the definition of those honors for science, as the cut scores for science aren't very clear at seventh grade. Cut scores for language arts outside of that ALA course, which is a high school level course, and US history, of course, it's really hard to determine who meets a criteria for that. So it's pretty exciting that every student has the opportunity to have that more challenging coursework if they choose to. And then again, FIED and the fine arts offering, what you'll see that's different about seventh grade is in addition to band, choir, and orchestra, we also offer a making music. And that's because we want to encourage students to take either band or choir or orchestra, because it gets them that opportunity to try an instrument, to try out choir. And then if they do that in sixth grade and they decide, hey, this really isn't for me, then okay, then maybe move over to making music. You've taken a chance at an instrument and maybe that really isn't for you, or you've taken a chance at vocals and that isn't your thing. And so now maybe you move over to making music. So that's why you can see the addition of a making music class in seventh grade. And then again, that C4 is an opportunity at seventh grade as well. And then you'll see that the allied options, again, that's by trimester. Again, one trimester of health, one trimester of art, and one trimester of energy and machines. And you'll notice that health is offered in the seventh grade. It wasn't offered in the sixth grade. So those trimester offerings do change dependent upon the grade level. And energy and machines is what you might expect. It really is an introduction to safety in the machine shop. It's an introductory to tools and safety, and it's problem solving around and how to build. I think they made a candy machine this year, and so if you can envision what that might look like, and if with the way that a middle school schedule works, a third of the class is taking art, a third of the class is taking energy and machines, and a third of the class is taking health, and then they're rotating every trimester. Then we move to eighth grade. All right, and again, now what's happening if for math, our eighth graders are typically taking Algebra 1. And what I didn't mention before, but now you kind of get a feeling, the seventh graders mostly are taking pre-algebra. Our sixth and seventh graders who are advanced, they could be advanced a year or two. They could be taking pre-algebra. If you're a sixth grader, you could be as advanced, you could be even taking Algebra 1 based on your cut scores. We have seventh graders and eighth graders who could be advanced a year or two and taking Algebra 1 or up to geometry. Some of our students, and we've had this happening for years, I was formerly an assistant principal over at South. We've been doing it for years, where students might get bused over to Tech or Apollo and they're taking geometry. And again, math, that's a little bit easier to determine because you can base that on cut scores, right? And so it's easy to determine this is a really good fit for a student, and this is where they need to be to continue to help them grow. And so it's pretty typical for us to continue to have students who either advance a year or two. Language arts, again, we do still offer. We have language arts that a lot of our students are in. They're either in the language arts. We may have some of the students who are in a section of honors language arts, or again, that section of 6 through 8 advanced language arts course as well. For science, this year, it's still earth science according to the state standards, and then next year, it will be switching over to physical science. And so just as a note there, and we are watching that closely and following the state guidance on that. And then we do have geography and then honors geography at the 8th grade for social studies. And then you'll notice for Phi-Ed, opposite that Phi-Ed, again, we have making music, band, choir, orchestra. But what you'll also notice, in addition to the C4 offering, which we offer all 3 grade levels, we also have Tech Ed. It's a year-long Tech Ed course, and that is an opportunity for students who have found that they really enjoy being in that CTE course, really being in the shop and enjoy that hands-on experience. And so we're giving those students an opportunity to do that because they found that that's a passion of theirs as well. And so that's another opportunity for 8th graders, because we find that for our 8th graders, that maturity, they've decided that that's a passion of theirs as well. The other thing that is relatively new within the last couple of years is that we're trying to create more pathways for students who decide that they want to join band or orchestra later on. And so what is not on the screen, but what I want to note is that they are offering beginner band, beginner orchestra at 7th grade, at 8th grade, and even into the high school now. And so in addition to the band, choir, orchestra for students who have been taking it from 6th, 7th, 8th grade up, all of our grade levels have pathways where we are offering beginner band, beginner orchestra, so that students continue and they feel comfortable coming into a classroom with other students who are new to the instruments as well. So that's really exciting as well, to continue to grow those programs. And then additionally, in our allied courses, the 3 trimesters that we offer are world languages, which is wow, a ton of different world languages. I will not be able to name them all, but if you can imagine, a few of them that come off the top of my head are sign language, Ojibwe, French, Chinese, Spanish. It's a ton of different languages that students are getting a chance to dabble in the languages, the culture, and which is great because then as 8th graders, they're getting a chance to look at those languages before they go off to high school, and they can decide if any of those languages are of interest to them before they go into their high school and elective courses. And then they have Life Smarts 2.0, and they took that as a 6th grader as well, it's 1.0, and then another art course.
So then once, you see all the courses, and it's pretty well-rounded for students at middle level from social emotional to academic rigor to college career and just healthy choices. And that's what we want for our students. You want to help them start to create some well-roundedness at the middle level as they go into high school, and they can make good, sound, and healthy decisions. And I think we just saw it here. So then it goes into students and families really looking at the registration process. It's not a lot to register in middle level. The choices you need to basically make are what musics that you want or foreign language around that. And so is, helping families really understand what are all the options, again, at middle level. What's the fastest track? If I could take, my student has the potential to be in an advanced class and I can go 2 grades ahead, here's my opportunity, right? If I don't want to do that and I want to look at a world language, they have the exposure all the way down to having tool, hammer, nail at a way that's safe and teaching our kids having multiple opportunities and good experiences. And so you see it here. So then middle level open house starts specifically for our north and south on January 29th, and it starts to our incoming 6th graders. So 5th graders, which we already know that our parochial brothers and sister schools around, they're already into December on who's coming to my school, right? They're out saying, hey, come here. We have the best education to offer. And so we come in January to say, oh, no, come on, look at our opportunity because we give a well-roundedness too. And I'll continue to say this, that we all know, I'll take our school and what we offer and you compare it around, I think we give a good offering to our families, right? And so it's helping them understand what choices that I can make within that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade until before they go into high school. And so our counselors start to go out and present to the schools at elementary about here music, try it. I think Zach, me and you had the conversation along like, when did my child have a chance to practice, right? And when the schools came out around those things that we found, like, here's how we can do it going into 5th grade with our teachers in that bridge year, going to show, here are all the things that you can do when you come to middle school from elementary. And so our music folks go out and our counselors go out and talk to the kids and start to help them understand, here's what's going to take place when you get ready and come to middle school, and here's how it looks. And so we go all the way down into March, and then April, when we start to look at the final numbers around how that looks, and then we build a master schedule on what the offerings are for the school year. And so that's kind of how it, looks for a student now, and we're just in the heart of it right now of getting out and saying, hey, come to Imagine 742. Here's what we can offer you, and it start for our folks in December now, like pre-K. Come. Here's what we can offer, and I just think we have a good product to offer around education for our families in this area. So, and you just saw it again. And so here's our counselors. They do all the day-to-day work. And when you go in the building, they're all over the place. They're flying, saying, hey, I was over at North and Shellstead and Rudd. They're out in the halls and just being out and visible to our kids and helping our students and families understand. Here's a great opportunity at middle level. When you go over to South, you have the same thing, just over there, and they're out and working with kids and everything to really give them good exposure and experience at middle level. And then when you go out to Kennedy, and I always laugh at Principal Will Height. I was out and she was actually on her knees out helping kids, and we laugh about this right now because she's out and with their counselors and just doing day-to-day stuff. So here are the resources for support for helping families understand. The counselors go out into middle level to do the presentations to the schools that feed into their schools. Counselors go out and do individual meetings after the presentations, and then we start to communicate all this out in multiple ways. The school webpage is probably the most, and then with all the conferences that come up, either family conferences, those are all informational items that we talk about registering, getting ready for the 24-25 school year. And, I know we're still just in the 4th week of the 2nd trimester, but we're already starting to plan for next year now and how that looks and what we offer for students. Questions?
Scott?
What do you teach in language arts?
What's that?
What do you teach in language arts?
What do I teach in language?
What did you teach? Tell them what as your
I didn't teach
profession.
in language
No.
arts.
Tell them what your profession is in teaching, though. What did you teach?
I taught science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, are you in language arts? Are they teaching phonics or what? I mean, what are they teaching in language arts?
Oh, okay. Well, let me read a little bit because I'm going to say it incorrectly if I try to, I have it right here. So, at the middle level, students receive they're getting concentrated focus on reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. They improve their reading strategies such as predicting, visualizing, connecting, questioning, clarifying, and evaluating through the use of collections curriculum. They use modern and comprehensive textbook series. They focus heavily on nonfiction and informational text. That includes a literature component, poetry, supplemental books called Close Reader. They'll also be expected to independently read, work on grammar, writing, and vocabulary. They complete homework and classroom assignments on time, and by the end of their 8th grade year, they would be able to compose strong formal writing assignments with proper grammar and sentence structure. That's in our, that's a general statement around, so not phonics, but if you're in our Science of Reading course, now we teach intervention reading, and in our Science of Reading course, which we have at the middle school and the high school, then yes, we do have explicit phonics reading instruction in our intervention courses for students who we have identified that need that explicit phonics instruction.
I believe the state legislature requires science of reading now. Is that for all students or?
Just for students who we've identified through our screener process that they need that explicit instruction. If they're not at grade level, then yes, we need to support them with that.
Okay. What is Life Smart?
Okay. I see, I brought all this because it's been a while since I've been, okay, at South. So Life Smarts 1.0. So it's a 6th grade allied course. That's the first one. They talk about it as kind of what life hacks are important for teenagers to know. Life can be stressful and unpredictable, but this class is meant to help you be prepared. So as I said when I spoke before, it's really about healthy decision making, personal care, wellness, that talks about careers in health sciences, human services, academic focus, healthy decision making, and academic studies.
Do you teach them how to balance a checkbook?
In Life Smarts, there is a little bit, we did do a follow-up with our teachers, and they do talk a little bit about Life Smarts 2.0, the 8th graders take. They do some personal finance, and they do junior achievement. And so they do a little bit with mock interviews in that class as well, and entrepreneurship.
Okay, I've been in junior achievement. I understand how that works. It's like setting up your own business.
Yep.
So they do some of that.
That's in the 2.0 for the 8th graders.
Okay. For these advanced classes, are they weighted in some way so that it isn't held against you that you didn't pass an advanced class whereas you might have passed a regular class?
In our middle schools, they're not weighted. In the because that GPA in the middle schools, they're not doing class rank in middle school, and that hasn't been an issue. And for distinction by honors, that 7th grade thing that that honors by distinction piece this year, what we do for that is we actually award, it's called a milestone on their report card. So it's reflected by honoring that the student did do the distinction by honors coursework. So we reflect that on the report card through that milestone piece. But once they get to high school and their GPA counts towards that class, you know, they want that towards their college application process, then yes, it is weighted once they take those advanced courses.
Okay. You said you teach science? What?
I taught science about 25 years ago.
Oh.
Did I just? Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was about 20 years ago. Yes. Yeah. In 1999, I started, my friends. Yes.
What are they teaching in science? What kind of classes?
Well, when I was at Apollo, like I said, I taught earth science and biology at Apollo, but we have flipped. They've kept biology the same at Apollo or in the high school, but what we've done is they've managed to kind of flip earth science back down to middle school. And so they've done some flipping with those standards, and so that's kind of the process that we're working through with our science coordinator or our science lead right now. But yeah, we've got it all figured out, and we've got a plan in place for that. But it is challenging because it does mean new resources and aligning our standards. So it's always challenging when they move the standards.
Was that standards changed this last year then? Or when was that changed?
They usually give us a couple of years ahead of time, and so we've had a couple of years to do this implementation process. So we're kind of in the middle of it. So this 24-25 is kind of our last phase of it, I should say.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
I have a question. I don't know if it'll make any sense or not. When I look at the schedules that are put together, there's a lot of courses that have been courses for 100 years. I mean, it's like it's got to be close to 100 years, things like algebra and geometry and courses like that. And as we're bringing kids up through the learning process, now if you look at just civilization in general, we're so far ahead of where we were 100 years ago. The type of engineering that's done on things, the speed with which things are done, and the way that you do things has changed dramatically. And it isn't, I can't believe that people nowadays are just that much smarter. It's that the process of getting the answers has completely changed. For example, let me just talk about Katherine Johnson. We talked about how she did all of the calculations manually. The mathematicians in NASA worked hundreds, or if not thousands, of hours doing mathematical calculations so that they could hit the right spot when they shot that rocket up into the air. Now they can press a button and they say, I'm here and I want to be here. You push a button and it tells you what your settings need to be. So it isn't that that person is a lot smarter, it's that the way that the person is getting the answer has changed dramatically. Yet when I look at our junior high coursework, it doesn't look like it's changed much from when I was in school or even prior to when I was in school. And I'm wondering if we have incorporated into, and this isn't just here, but statewide, nationally, have we incorporated changes of society and how answers are derived into coursework? And is it still is it still as important today that a kid has 2 full years of algebra as it was when I was going to school and we had calculators were a really cool thing if you could get your hands on one. But now you don't do longhand algebra anymore. Geometry, there's tools and things. If a carpenter is not going to sit down and longhand go through geometry calculations to figure out measurements. You'll put your measurements into your handy dandy little tool and it'll tell you what you need in that space. So I mean, what I'm kind of getting at is when we build a schedule like this and we've got Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 taking up as much time as it does, and some of the other courses, those are probably the ones that come to my mind the most there, because science, I think you're learning about how things happen. That's a little different. But is that as important to devote that much time to that? And are we devoting too much time to something that kids truly won't use in their life skills and taking time away from when we could be teaching more life skill type courses? That's my question, if it makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. And that's the challenge, right? And and I'll say it again, I'm new to this role in curriculum, but I am equally interested in how we can explore ways to navigate that. I mean, even looking at the challenge of AI, artificial intelligence, and how students can punch it in and get the answer, how we navigate that, and how we use that as a tool. That's part of it. But I agree, how can we help students? How can we explore the fact that we have to have 3 years of math? 3 years of math, that's what it is, it's the state standard. But could we do it in a way that's tied to a career field that students are interested in? So for some students, like that Algebra 2, the way it's delivered is working for them and they love that path, but it's not working for every kiddo. So, you know, we are offering geometry, algebra through construction, but right now it's offered 2 periods a day. And I think what's happened is we haven't got the numbers in there because students are giving up 2 periods a day, right? But how can we mirror and make a course like that where students are able to, we combine it with something that they're truly interested in and they're passionate about, and be able to get them the math standard in a way that they're going to use it in a life skill.
Right.
So that's something we're going to have to do because the state standards aren't going to go away. But we have to be able to deliver them in a way that's going to be meaningful for students and give them opportunities to explore all the things that they want to explore. Because it is frustrating. We had this conversation with our advisory committee, which is all our community partners, and our community partners want our students to have micro internship opportunities. I want my own children who go to our schools to have micro internship opportunities to be able to go out in the community and explore businesses and explore welding opportunities and explore all these beautiful things that we have to offer, but they have to get through their required standards from MDE. And so that's the challenge that I agree with you 100%, that we have to be pretty innovative about how we can get there. So agreed.
Yeah,
But
so,
outside of those standards from MDE, do we have enough time to do the things that we need to do? That's,
Correct.
so we have accountability measures and we have state standards. We have standardized testing that's still accountable for us as a data point to say, I'm learning at this certain level around proficiency. So that's some things going back to what Shannon just said on standards, that we have to, algebra has to be here now, like you said, reading, writing, and math. To your point, how's it become creative in robotics that math is taking place and we identify the standards within that, right? So when you look at it, just look what our students are offered to citizenship, to college and careers, all within, this is just 8th grade. How do we find, Scott hit on personal finance, right? We want the functional skill of kids to be able to be self-sufficient starting now. And so I think we'll continue to figure out transformative ways to get those standards in other courses outside of math to meet the standards. I just think, like Shannon said, we're learning right now here's the scope, but I'm with you. Our classes shouldn't just call it algebra. It should be robotics math or something where we're hitting those standards where it's hands-on, it's fun, or what kids may need that they might need Shannon to say, come in, here's what you do. They like routine and structure, but I'm with you. I think we'll continue to find new ways to get those standards that are required in different subject areas where it doesn't look like when I was doing it some years ago, to here's a new way of doing it, because you're right. Information, I could just pull up this and say, hey, tell me what I want to know. Now, how do I apply it in practical pieces? So, yeah.
I think also to your question about do we have enough time, I think time is one challenge. I think the other challenge that we face is the way, the strictness of licensures, right? Because to assign a math credit, you have to be math licensed. So I can be as creative and prepared and teaching all of those math skills through robotics or through engineering or through computer science. But if I'm not math licensed, if I'm business licensed, you're out of luck as a student, right? And so I think it's a time problem, and I think it's a licensure issue. But I wanted to stand up and applaud when you were done talking.
Yeah, that's it. So all the requirements that we have to go around licensure, it's a whole nother, our HR folks can tell you over there, that's just the whole thing. And then making sure we get the folks to come to the field, right, of education and how we grow our own, because they're not just jumping off to come into education now. And so how do you get the best and brightest and the competitive salary of, you want those folks to be able to teach those classes in the required pieces. So yeah, you're right on.
Well, I feel like it's important to the kids. It's like, I think in the last meeting I talked about it a little bit, but the kid has to understand why they're taking a course if you're going to grab them and get them excited about learning the stuff. If they think there's no reason, what am I ever going to use this for? Then they won't, there's no reason for them to learn
You
it.
hear the question, when am I ever going to use this, right?
Right.
When am I ever going to do this? You hear that, what? I'm never going to.
But my question there was kind of, there's a little bit of truth to it, I think.
No, it's honest truth. I have sat in the classroom where a student actually said to a teacher, I could get this information right here.
Right.
So you just
Yep.
giving me that information, how are you going to spark my brain to
We
want to
accept
engage?
that in society. We don't question NASA when they use a computer and have the calculations done for them. We don't say you were lazy and make them go back and do it. We're excited about that. And that person can then spend their time developing further technology, which is going to help the next generation. And it's just kind of like you go back to junior high, and we haven't done that. We still just kind of stall them back here. And maybe it's foundational. Maybe you have to know that stuff before you can even get to the point of doing that. But it,
Yeah,
just looking at it, and I just kind of,
that exploratory age of 10, 11, 12, 13, right? You're getting taller, shorter, your voice changes. You have families that have an argument with their kids to say, hey, I want you still to be bass and choir. Then the kids say, hey, I want to go do fire all day long, right? And so those things that come along with it as well are, competing interests in the daily schedule too. So yeah. Thanks.
Anyone else? I have a question. The electives, do they automatically do, or can they do all robotics?
They automatically do all three.
All three? Okay. And then I just had a comment that I love the honor of through different years of, well, you can do all honors. No, you can do one honor, or you can, so I just imagine this is brilliant because it's got to make parents and administration, both sides. It's like a win-win, I think, for easier to schedule, to accommodate everybody, and you don't have parents wondering why their kid isn't here or why they're here. So, way to think of that one. So,
I can't take credit for it.
I thank our teachers out there and just doing it every day and showing up in the classroom and really loving what they do. And
That's awesome.
giving us multiple opportunities and how that looks. And so
Right, yeah, making it work. All right. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, then we're moving on to our one action item tonight. We have the approval of use of fiscal year '24 one-time funds presented tonight by Amy O'Scallerud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services. Gary, are you the side wing here, or?
Most of the items are facility related, so he's here if there's
Okay.
specific questions.
how long Heather's going to be on? Do you think it would be worth it to do the standing committee reports? Sure. If there are any, I don't know. But just to kind of try to stall it.
There are none.
Well, then.
So the answer is no.
When did she step out? 7, she should be close. This is,
I hate to have what I'm questioning is just if we could wait on this agenda item until Heather gets back, because there's only 4 of us here, so we certainly have a quorum, but I would feel more comfortable if we had our full 5 members here before we did a voting item.
the school's update
Maybe we could
is in
do
the-
the schools update now so should I make a motion to move the schools update up to before action item number 4? Just to stall for a little bit of time to see
Yeah.
if Heather can be back.
Is that okay? It's the schools update is in part of the work session, and we're in the board meeting? Is that okay?
It's okay with me. Oh, forget it. We're trying to
We
stall, Heather.
stalled.
so-
Good stalling. That worked really well.
Okay,
All right.
that's stalled enough.
Let me just get reconnected here. There we go. Okay, good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, members of the board. It's a good thing we stalled because my presentation is all of 3 slides, so I wouldn't have been able to stall very much longer. This is an approval for, an additional approval for use of the FY24 one-time funds. As you might recall, we had an.
I withdraw my motion.
Oh, sorry. As you may recall, we had an initial presentation on district fiscal priorities and a first round of one-time funding approval at the board meeting on October 18th. So this is a follow-up to that. What you see on the screen is what was approved at that last meeting. So this is not what we're approving tonight, but just kind of, I'm not going to go through them all, but just kind of a recap. A lot of various items, playgrounds, some athletics activities, a significant amount for the Apollo Theater upgrades that'll happen this summer, and a number of other items. And so what we have tonight is kind of a follow-up to that, some items that have come up since then, kind of in a lot of these same similar categories. So what we're looking at tonight for approval is additional priorities for the one-time funding, $325,000 for building safety and security. And I'll just highlight kind of the 3 big ones are the first 3 on that list. Building safety, security, again, follow-ups to a number of the items that were on the previous approval. Athletics activities, $230,000. And then there's additional funding for the Apollo Theater upgrades. As we've been working through with architects and engineers on the work, theater equipment we found is astronomically expensive. And so there's just a lot going on in the theater that isn't LTFM eligible. And so we're really finding that if we want to do it and do it right and not feel like we had our opportunity and it's obviously more cost effective to do it now while we're in there and doing the rest of the renovations. We felt it was prudent to add the additional funding and make sure that we're not having to pick and choose and wish that we had done it right the first time. So those are kind of the 3 big things. You see a little bit there for enrollment advertising, some money allocated for feminine hygiene product dispensers. That's to be compliant with that new state statute. And then funding to have the signage here at the district office be a digital sign. So those are the total items. Those collectively total $925,000, which is what we're looking for approval for tonight.
Anybody have questions? Scott?
Yeah, the digital office sign, is there going to be any coordination between this sign and the other signs that aren't being used very well in the district?
So all of the signs are currently coordinated. We have that in our playbook and notebook. So there's consistent messaging, school messaging, right, if there's a specific school event. But our communications team sends that out to all of the buildings for consistency. Ours will mirror that, but also probably pull in some HR sorts of things, right? If we have job fairs, we want to advertise things that we may not advertise on a sign at, Clearview. So it'll be similar, yes, but have some additional kind of recruitment sort of messaging.
Okay, how many district signs do we have so far?
Review,
Westwood.
Westwood. So that's it, right? 6?
This will be number 7? Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're getting good messages out. Because why pay a lot of money for signs we don't use?
And I drive by Westwood every morning on my way, and I know for a fact, at least that one, right? I don't drive by a lot of them because I'm not in those other neighborhoods. But I know that our messaging, that we send that out and that's being updated. There's a dedicated staff member in each building who's tasked with that. And so, absent some sort of illness or something where that trained person is out, we've been making sure that our buildings are prioritizing that.
Okay, that's a big question. Thank you.
Okay, this is an action item. Looking for a motion to approve the use of fiscal year '24 one-time funds in the amount of $925,000.
I would move that we approve the use of the funds for the one time of $925,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Al, a second by Scott. Any further discussion? Zach, can you call vote?
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorholz, yes. Shannon Haas,
Yes.
Heather Weems,
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
All right. Then thank you. Moving on to reports, the Board of Education Standing Committee reports, which since the last time we met, no committee has met, kind of over the holidays. So
Didn't we meet?
do you have one?
No? Was it before? Okay.
Future agenda items. January regular board meeting topics will include Oak Hill School presentation, AI update, approval of tentative agreements, if any, and some policy readings. At this time, does any board member wish to suggest a future agenda item? Okay. Good on that. So then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's board meeting.
So move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Can't remember if I do this. All in favor, say aye. I don't remember if I said that.
Aye.
Opposed? That was 5 ayes. Must have been simultaneous. Okay, board meeting is adjourned. It is 7:23 PM, opening up tonight's Board of Education work session. First up, we have proposed new board policy 621, Literacy and Read Act for first reading, presented by Dr. Mike Rivard, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services.
Good evening,
And he's
Chair.
ready to go.
I'm ready to go. We have an over-under. I'm not sure what Gary was hoping for, but, good evening, Chair Haas, Dr. Putnam, and members of the board. This evening, I'll talk a little bit and present on Board Policy 621, Literacy and the READS Act. As we all have learned over the last, since probably May, the READS Act is something new that has come upon us, but as a district, we've been preparing. And I'll go through the policy. As you notice in Roman numeral 1, the purpose of this policy is to align with the law. And they truly have, because the policy reads exactly as the law and the statute does. So I will not go through every point, but I will try to highlight the major points as we go through. The one thing I will call out for you as we go through, just because you may have some questions, is that as a school district, we already have a literacy plan and have been working on it and are ready to go, and that will become part of a report that'll have to go to MDE. So you'll see that being referred to much or often as I go through what the actual policy is. So the policy has a number of definitions as it relates to the science of reading and what evidence-based practices are as we're working with students and teaching them how to read. So I'll brush through those and bring us down to some of the more action items. The policy does read in order, which is nice. So as you get into Roman numeral 4, it does talk about and ask about how we will be screening for students and ensuring that we have an evidence-based screener. We have that already in place. That we will be ensuring that twice a year, that we're communicating how students are doing, and we do that during conferences, so that we're ensuring that that parents are learning about how their students are doing on these screeners. If students aren't doing well, we have an obligation to be providing them reading-related services that would be interventions, and also be looking at providing strategies for those parents for how they can work with their students at home.
Do you want questions at the end, or do you want them as you're going?
Either way, what would you prefer, Al?
If we're communicating biannually at conferences, is there another way that we communicate it also?
In terms
Not
of,
not all parents attend
so
conferences.
the reports would go home and also be uploaded in the EduClimber and Skyward, so parents would have access to it. But we do have, as our teachers are working through this and as we come, I don't want to use the word robust again, as we become more proficient in how we're working with parents and making sure that they recognize this, we know that our teachers are going to have an obligation to be finding alternative and many different ways of reaching out to parents. And for those students who are not being successful in their reading skills, other individuals, other educators will also become involved, and for them to become involved, we'll be looking for permission from parents. So I think those communications, if students are struggling, will continue to happen. So as it goes from the screener, it moves on in the policy for identification and reports. We have to be looking at kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3, along with our ML and students in special education, that we're universally screening them. So those students are also included, ensuring that they have foundational reading skills, and that we have to submit students are doing by June 15th of every year. It coincides with the updating of our literacy policy. Now, as students go beyond grade 4 and above, for those students who are ML or students with special education needs, parents may opt out of them continuing to do the screener. That could be often the case because we are doing access testing, which is a different screener that we utilize for our students with EL needs, along with students who would be in special education, who are doing yearly progress reports along with a 3-year comprehensive evaluation of their reading skills. So those things are also happening. So you could see that a parent who has a child who might be an ML or a special ed learner may choose to opt out of the screener. It goes in again to talking a little bit about our literacy plan and ensuring that we do have a screener for characteristics of dyslexia. We've been doing that, and I think we're a leader within the state of ensuring that that's happening. As it moves from identification, it calls out what we should be doing next for intervention. Again, this language is coming word for word from the statute. It asks us to be ensuring that we're having reading interventions, and we see that already occurring within our districts. We have intervention already occurring through Lexia, through Reading Corps, through ADSES, Sonde. Those things are already occurring for our kids who might be struggling with learning those foundational reading skill sets. But we do know if kids are not meeting their grade level for reading skills by the end of their school year, that we must continue to provide for those intervention until the student does reach that grade level. So previously, and we've alluded to this in previous board policy, we were always looking at reading by grade 3. Now we're talking about reading at every school year and being at grade level. And that lives in the READS Act. The READS Act has a high focus on making sure we're doing this with our with our parents and their guardians, and utilizing them as consultants, and making sure they're directly involved if the kids are struggling with learning those foundations of reading. The policy moves on then to having some specificity on what our local literacy plan has. This will be the first year that those will become due. The MDE is required to provide a template for this by March 15th. We're ready and rolling, and we have ours already completed, and we are in alignment with what's required in the READS Act. We're working to make sure that we're actualizing all of those things that are in our literacy plan, and we'll have a presentation about that next month. But we're ready and we're prepared to make sure that we're meeting the obligation of what's included in the READS Act. And then this part again alludes to making sure that we have this completed by June 15th of 2024 and then every year thereafter. The next part you've heard many times during these last 6 or 7 months about staff training. It is a requirement within the READS Act that we are providing staff training on the science of reading. And we're doing that through letters training for our teachers of students for in the younger grades, along with our interventionists at this point. And we'll continue to expand that work to all of our teachers who are working with students who are involved in reading instruction. A lot of dates in there. We're meeting the obligations of our dates when you see August 2025 and some of the things that they're asking us to do. There are some specific employee groups when you get into literacy coordinators, literacy specialists. We have all those employees within our district, and we are ensuring that we're going to meet those timelines if we haven't already met them already. It continues on with staff development. I was just alluding to that a little bit more. It's asking and directing us as a school district, along with all districts across the state of Minnesota, to be choosing curriculum and interventions that are in alignment and approved by the Minnesota Department of Education. So you'll see that throughout staff development. And the last component of this policy talks about the incentive aids that are being provided by the state of Minnesota and whether we all agree whether it's enough funding and money. They do have some areas that their expectations, the MDE has as expectations of where we should be using that money. And that's for training, for evidence-based programs that are approved by MDE, making sure that we have a literacy lead. That's pretty important as you go out to outlying school districts, is that they might not have the funds nor the large enough staff that they could support a literacy lead. We are fortunate that we do, and we have more than one. Beyond that is just our legal references. Are there any questions for our first reading?
Is that a no? Or- Heather?
I know I've asked something similar before, but in our intensive language programs, what is their reading at grade level? So if you're in Spanish immersion or Somali immersion, what does it look like and how do they typically test? I mean, oftentimes they self-select, and so sometimes that has something to do with it, but what do you see in general?
So Heather's your question whether they still have to take the test or whether they're not doing as well on the test, or both?
Both.
So they are required to take the test. And what we see, and I know Donna had talked a little bit about this last month, is that the students oftentimes might not do as well as you go through kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, but we easily see that by fourth and fifth grade, they are meeting their targets or even going beyond that.
And can you remind me, or maybe I should just know this, is if we don't see movement in the right direction or fast enough, what does the state say and what happens?
We have a requirement to provide intervention for those students.
So there's no penalty to individual schools for not meeting. I mean, obviously, this is all about providing services. It's not punitive in terms of trying to catch districts.
At this point, my perception is no. How that may change as the years progress, I'm not sure. I would hope they'll be highlighting the districts that are doing well and that we would be one of those districts. But I would hope we're not back to 2001 where we're just looking to see where districts are not doing as well.
Okay, then we're moving on to the next one, which is another first reading. It is proposed revised board policy 514, bullying prohibition. I'm too tired. Prohibition, thank you. Are you ready? Sorry, again, presented by Dr. Mike Rivard, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services.
Thank you, Chair Haas. So this is a statute change, and it'll be a brief introduction to what that statute change is about. This policy was reviewed on July 20th of last year. So the change comes down to a language change that the district or that the state has added. As a refresher, the purpose of this policy is to ensure that we're preventing bullying and taking action to investigate, respond to, and remediate when we do see students who are engaging in bullying. The change comes in that they're identifying two different areas. One is sexual exploitation, in that if sexual exploitation is being seen within a behavior within students, that becomes part of the bullying policy and is obviously prohibited. The other area is related to sadistic and malicious conduct. Those are defined by Minnesota statute. Were not included in previous prohibitions of bullying. They are now added to this policy and part of this statute. So MSBA has now included that within the policy, which it should be. No other areas of this policy have been changed.
Any questions or comments on that? All right, thank you. Moving along on some board policies. Next up, we have a first reading for Board Policy 534, which is unpaid meal charges. Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Operations, is presenting.
Good evening again. First policy that I'd like to present this evening is the unpaid meal charges, which when we're in this era of free meals for all students, it seems like a policy that we no longer need, but we do. And so what you have before you this evening is the policy that we've had on the books that has a few minor changes. Even though every student gets a free regular meal, there are still some things that are charged for. Items like a la carte, milk, if it's not included with one of the free meals. So if a student comes with a cold lunch and wants milk, that's a fee. And then also if a student wants a second meal, then that would be a fee. And so on the first page, you'll see a few changes just sprinkled throughout there to address those types of things. Just some minor changes, and seems like pretty easy fixes, but there was a lot of discussion to get this just right, so that we were using terms like second meals, and so that we could be clear. And then the other change would be on the second page under Roman numeral 4, 4A, where it has, we struck where it says, where appropriate, families may be encouraged to apply for free and reduced price meals for their children. Well, we no longer need to do that. However, we do encourage parents multiple places and multiple times to apply for educational benefits, because it's still based on income, and there are a lot of benefits other than free and reduced meals that apply to that. Any questions on this?
Okay, and then you have one more here. First reading for proposed revised board policy 806, which is crisis management policy.
Yes, this is going to feel like Groundhog's Day, because we recently just did this one. And I think I sat here and talked about how the EPAC committee had input and has given us good counsel on that. That still is true, but along with that, the state legislature added some additional requirements for us, and that's what you'll see here. We've added those to this policy. Under Roman numeral 5, it's definitions. What I want to point out here is the state uses active shooter. We don't use that terminology. We use active threat. And so wherever active shooter was used, we substituted that for active threat to align with our language. So the first part is basically, like most policies where, you'll get some definitions. When we get down to B, then we get into more of the day-to-day application of this. And right at the beginning, you'll see that that within this policy, we need to pay attention that when we're delivering, that's accessible, developmentally appropriate, culturally aware, trauma-informed, and you'll see trauma-informed throughout the policy change, and then inclusive of accommodations for students. Student mental health and wellness is a big factor here, and we've had this discussion over the years as we've looked at this policy, that it's really a fine balance to prepare for these types of emergencies, but yet not traumatize our students and staff in the process. And that was really the big focus of this legislation. Also, that we give notice to families. What we do is we sent out to all families in the fall information on all drills, and then as drills come up, the schools communicate that back out. And each school has different ways of communicating that works best with their families, and we trust the schools to deliver that in the best way that works for them. Then there's some language on participation in active threat drills, and it's really a choice. Students can opt out, parents can opt their students out. This is not required, and that's what most of this language is. Then when we get to G, there's language on violence protection, and there are a couple pieces there that our schools have been doing. Our schools, even before this came about, our secondary schools are delivering training to staff, to students on violence protection. And they also have advisory groups where they take input from students on types of things that we should be including and things that we should be considering. So even though it's in policy here, this has been practiced for a number of years in our schools. The legislation and policy also require that we inform the board of what we're doing around crisis planning and active threat drills. And we already did this. I believe it was the first meeting in November, Principal Heitkamp and I gave a presentation, and we talked about the drills we were doing. And finally, the last one, we're a little unique here. And again, we've been doing this for a while. We haven't had this in the policy, but the model policy did include this, and it's good that we document it. Because of our proximity to the Monticello power plant, we have plans in place in case there's some sort of incident there. And we're required, and the policy finally has it in here, but if a 10-mile radius of the plant, you have to have a plan for those students, because if something happened, we can't send students back into that contamination area. And when we first did this years ago, we thought it just applied to Clearview. Well, we quickly, started doing the math and figured out, well, it's not only Clearview, it's South, it's Tech. And then we found that there were some students at Madison because they were attending the Chinese immersion program. And then we started looking, and we have students who will open enroll into other schools beyond their attendance areas. So instead of just concentrating on Clearview, we really have to scan the whole district and look for addresses. And what we need to have is a plan in place where if something happened, we can't send buses in that area, but we have to have a temporary way to shelter those students and be able to reunify them with their families.
Gary, can we just clarify that South and Tech are not within 10 miles of the nuclear power plant, but they have students attending those
Correct.
schools who are?
Yep, it's the residents. Yep,
Yes.
thanks, Al. Yeah. And actually, Clearview isn't. It comes up fairly close, but it's the residents. And those are the changes.
Any questions or comments on that one? Scott?
When you're running these drills, like an active threat drill, how do you keep from tipping off your response to an active threat? I mean, say it's one of our students that's going to come in with a gun, and you've already told them this is what we're going to be doing and how we're going to do it. That would be a problem.
Yeah, first of all, these drills are more classroom instruction. They aren't full-scale drills. It's talking through. And that would be a danger in any type of drill. You just never know who that danger might be. And you are giving information out, but everyone's getting the same information. And I believe that it's better off that everyone know what to do versus worry about that one person that could be the perpetrator.
The other thing I'll just add there, Gary, is we're no longer in a lockdown where we all have common procedures in a crisis drill. We're in run, hide, fight. So we are giving that teacher in the location that they're at the discretion to either run, to hide, or to fight in that given scenario. And so it's not like we have one way to crisis manage. It may look very different depending upon what part of the building you're in when that crisis happens.
Okay, thank you. Last up for tonight, we have schools updates, and presenting we have Nikki Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of Pre-K 5 Education, Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, and Dr. Mike Rivard, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services.
There we go. All right, good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, and board members. Tonight for our elementary update, we get to highlight our Oak Hill Owls. When asked about strengths at Oak Hill, Principal Jokela reflected that their school's greatest strength is their people. They are hardworking, kind and caring, and believe all students can succeed. Oak Hill is a true community with great involvement from their parents and families. They have many parents who volunteer not only for special events, but also to students read and help with community projects. Highlights this year for Oak Hill include the recent Spelling Bee, the great theater production of 101 Dalmatians showcasing the 5th grade students, the 4th grade choir concert, and all of these events were well attended by staff, students, and families, continuing to highlight the involvement in and all around their learning community.
All right. One of the big things just around positive climate and culture, I was just out in the buildings the last few weeks before we went to break and going into a new year, and I was just seeing what was out on the walls, and I was at Tech specifically, and students and staff were having conversations around how they want their school community to look, right? How's it feel? What do you see on the walls? What does it look like? And these were just some of the things that stood out. If I'm just a student and I really pay attention to what's out here and really the information, life is like a bike, is like riding a bike to keep you on balance. You must keep moving. Like, this is from a student, right? The staff saying the same thing of just, here's how we should feel, just do, and just creating a positive climate and culture, and then you got this, right? And so these are just some of the things that you see out in the buildings and in the walls are really around that positive climate and culture, around our strategic objective number 1. And how do you create that environment specifically to feel good, right? Words of affirmation or inspirations to really help our kids. And so activities are there, our students are still doing some great things. Over at Apollo, they did a big robotics. I don't know how many students, it was a lot, right? And so they had a lot of contests going on. Our students came, look at, you see them just celebrating at the top, just some of the accomplishments they made. And our students continue to meet across the state with how we want our environments to look when they show up to compete in activities, athletics, music, all the types of things where they're in these communities to talk about difference, inclusion, and our students in the Minnesota High School League are still continuing to have conversations on how we want our schools and our communities to look and feel for our students. So that was just a big one in secondary, and then I think the last one specifically was we just got a chance to the secondary principals, coordinators and directors got a chance to go out to Austin to see how we compare and what's going on out in the world in technology, engineering, arts, and what we're offering, and then what's being offered out on the national stage. And we're right there with what's going on. We have a lot of course offerings on multiple pathways. And so our folks were just seeing what's out there, going back to what you mentioned, Al, on here's opportunities, here's what we're learning, here's some of the best things that are happening, and how does our district fare up, and then what are we learning to continuously transform how learning looks in a good way. So just a lot of good things going on at the secondary.
Thanks, Jason. So this evening, I'm excited to share information about our Health Services Department. One of the great part of my new position is learning more and more about the educational services that happen across our district, and it's pretty amazing. Our nurses serve students in District 742 along with participating parochial schools, which is 11 licensed school nurses along with 17 licensed practical nurses, and they're ensuring every day that kids have an opportunity to be at school. They do amazing things, and they're here not only just during the school year, but they're also participating in our summer school. But what I enjoyed learning a little bit more about was they serve over 5,800 kids in a school year. They see somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,500 office visits where our students are coming down and needing help. And all of those things are happening within our schools. For them as school nurses, they are managing individual health plans of more than 450 kids. And they're also ensuring that, especially at our secondary level, the kids who may need opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities but may have a health concern, they're reviewing their health records, and sometimes they're even having to be there for those kids who might have a significant health concern. But they're showing up in those evenings to make sure that those kids can participate. We're real fortunate to have this group of real committed health services provider within the St. Cloud School District. So thank you. That's our school update for this evening.
I'm surprised you indicated that we're providing nurses for the parochial schools too?
Scott, we do have to provide nursing services to parochial schools that are commensurate in the same level that we do for our public schools.
Charter schools also?
We do not provide them for our charter schools.
Wonder why the difference?
I would have to turn to my friend Ms. Galaroo behind me for that exact answer. But is she raising her hand?
Yep, and that comes back to state funding. So there's specific statutes that govern non-public services, and there's funding that flows to us to provide those. So we get funding from the state of Minnesota to provide guidance, nursing, and then a very small amount of textbook or instructional support material for homeschools and for non-publics. So it's based on what's in statute. But it's not coming out of our allocated funding. We're only obligated to spend the money that we generate. So we figure out what that allocation is and how much FTE that buys each school in each given year.
Okay. There was recently a law passed that we have to provide nurses on the field trips. Do we have enough nurses to do that, or are we cutting the field trips?
We do our very best to make sure that we're providing nurses for our field trips. We're working to ensure that those kids, especially those kids with significant health needs, are going to have that opportunity. During the past 2 to 3 months, we've had to look at slowing down some of the field trip opportunities. But each week, the three assistant superintendents review the field trips that are being offered, and then we sit down with our health services supervisors to make sure that those trips can happen.
Does that include athletic trips?
Absolutely.
What are we doing to recruit more nurses?
What great question. We're scheduled to have a little bit of a discussion about that this week. We are looking at the nursing programs both at the St. Cloud Technical College and how we're going out and trying to recruit our LPN candidates, and always working with our colleges in the community. What I keep watching for and hoping for is a grow your own possibility, and also different methods of how we can provide nursing services that go maybe beyond just our RNs and our LPNs too.
We have sort of an emphasis in our high schools on healthcare, supported by Centricare to some extent. What does grow your own look like?
And those are some of the steps that we're looking at. Dr. Harris and I were talking about that actually today, about some of our CNA opportunities and some of the kids who are participating in that, and how are we going to look for opportunities and maybe keeping those kids available, or what they may be looking to do long range as they look into an LPN or an LSN/RN position.
Okay, well, you're on it, that's good.
Sir.
What's the minimum qualification? Like when you have to have nurses, what is the degree or the accreditation that they have to have?
Sure. At this time, we have two levels of nurses. One would be a licensed practical nurse, would be someone with a 2-year degree and associate's degree. Our licensed school nurses are RNs, so they have a bachelor's degree, and they also are public health nurses too, so they have that additional level of licensure.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's work session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Heather, a second by Scott. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, work session is adjourned. It is 7:57 PM. Have a good night. Thanks for watching.